The Ukrainians are extremely mad at Iran to the point they have stripped Iran's ambassador of his accreditation. Why are they doing this? Because Iran has been sending drones, right? So this past week, you've had a lot of videos popping up from Odessa, for example, of these Iran-made drones being deployed by Russia against Ukrainian positions. So we looked at the Mohajer 6, we looked at the Shahed 136, particularly that's the one that I wanted to talk to you about. And keep in mind, some reports talk about an Iranian drone. There is a Russian drone, however, the Giran 2, which is a derivative of Iran's Shahed 136, okay? So it's basically a Russian modification of the Shahed. Now, I really got to be honest with you guys because I'm confused. A few months ago, people were laughing at Iran. They were saying, oh, Russia has no drones left. Russia has no industry left. Look at them. They're so pathetic. They have to go to Iran to buy those crappy drones from Iran. And now I'm seeing in the New York Times, Ukrainian military officials really worried about these drones. So apparently they're not crappy after all. Apparently they work and they're very deadly. Let me show you this from the New York Times. The headline reads, Russia deploys Iranian attack drones, Ukrainian military says, and it's dated September 18th. A new and Ukrainian officers say frighteningly effective weapon has appeared in the war on the Russian side, Iranian-made attack drones. The powerful weapon is a so-called kamikaze drone carrying a warhead of about 80 pounds. Now, for those of you who used the civilized metric system, 80 pounds is about 36 kilos. So, its appearance in Ukraine is the first time it has been deployed outside the Middle East. The use of the Shahed 136 drones show that while Russia remains mostly isolated internationally, it was even rebuked just last week by leaders of China and India. I'll get to that in a bit. Moscow has still found support from Iran. It also adds a layer of geopolitical complexity to the conflict as more nations are drawn into providing weaponry. Don't you love the way they write? So, you know, when the United States is sending HIMARS and, Poland is sending all of its Soviet tanks and Germany sending tanks, all these countries in NATO are sending like all the old weaponry they've got into Ukraine. That's defending Ukrainians. And when Iran sends drones to Russia, that's adding geopolitical complexity. I love it, man. In its first use in Ukraine, the Iranian drone blew up an American-supplied M777 howitzer used by the Ukrainian military. This is according to Colonel Kulagin, who is the commander of artillery operations in the Kharkiv counteroffensive. He says that, quote, it blew the 777 in half. Instead of firing 100 artillery shells, it's easier to release one of those drones. Half a dozen strikes destroyed howitzers and armored vehicles, killing 4 soldiers and wounding 16, according to the colonel. I mean, that's devastating, right? That's devastating. I believe there were some pictures in this article down here somewhere. But yeah, absolutely devastating, right? Here's a Russian Giran 2 derivative attacking the headquarters of the Ukrainian Navy in Odessa. Okay, let's take a look at this video. I don't know if it's very clear. I'll show you some other videos. Here's another report.
Опять летит. Опять летит. Туда же.
So I can tell you just from the shape, it looks like a triangle, like an equilateral triangle. They call it a delta wing. That certainly looks like a Shahed 136 or a Giran 2. We saw in the New York Times report that it carries an 80-pound warhead. So 36 kilos. They're saying also that it can cruise for about 2,000 kilometers. That's insane. That is very, 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 fuel efficient, to put it mildly. I want to show you a video here. Maybe you can get an idea of how they're fired as well, usually. I'm not sure if it was this year or last year, because every year they have the military celebrations, but it gives you an idea of what these Iranian drones look like that are being used in Ukraine. So it's a rack of 6 of them, 5, excuse me, and obviously they have no wheels because they're not intended to land anymore, right? They're called loitering drones, kamikaze drones. The whole point is that you fire them once and they explode upon impact. Iran is not the first country to use this kind of technology. The ones that invented this are the Germans during World War II. So basically, in World War II, it was called the V1, nicknamed Doodlebug. You wouldn't know where it's going to land, but if you were close by, you would hear the motor dying because it ran out of fuel. And so they put just enough fuel for it to reach the target. Obviously, this is a lot more sophisticated. It has a guidance system as well to a certain extent, but the idea is the same, that it's one use and that's it. We were talking about what it exploded. This is a howitzer 777. Okay, so the Ukrainian military official was saying that one of the drones blew this thing in half. This is an artillery cannon. And I just want to go back to the article. They say that the appearance of the drones, even amid Ukraine's otherwise successful and ongoing counteroffensive in the northeast, prompted Colonel Kulagin to appeal to Ukraine's Western allies to quickly provide defenses or a similar weapon to strike back. He said, give us something like this. So the United States is giving Ukraine Switchblade drones, and those were used in an attack on its Black Sea Fleet headquarters. Ukraine has also used a Turkish TB2. You guys remember that they were talking about North Korea as well. I saw an article from Al Jazeera just a few hours ago. The North Koreans are denying that Russia is buying anything from them whatsoever. Because remember, I told you at the time when it was disclosed by the Americans that this could turn out to be a bunch of BS, because the only source for this is the Pentagon. So, take that with a pinch of salt. The North Koreans are saying that we've never given the Russians any weapons, and we are not giving them any weapons now. Going back to the Iranian drones, they're saying that debris from the crashed drone indicated that the Russian military had removed its Iranian markings. The drone was mislabeled on a winglet as a Geran 2 Russian-made drone. So that's why you have these conflicting reports, right? Some are saying it's a Geran 2, some are saying it's a Shahid. I'm assuming the Russians wouldn't like to highly publicize it, but this Ukrainian colonel is saying that these drones are a very serious problem, and without countermeasures, they will destroy all our artillery. That's pretty scary. Quote, it was not like artillery that hit us before. I haven't met something like this before. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, you've been hearing about this counteroffensive in Ukraine. They took back regions in Kharkiv. There's also fighting in Kherson, but the main gains were in Kharkiv, right? I would say that this, in addition to the mobilization, these are some of the biggest Russian responses, right? There's a certain amount of arrogance also involved with the Western analysis, because they look at these drones and they laugh at them and they think that they're, they underestimate them, right? You've had people saying, oh, look at these parts inside the Iranian drone. It's so ineffective and it's so badly made and so on. Look, man, in war, the idea is how many objectives can you kick down, right? How many wins can you get against the enemy? If the Ukrainians themselves are saying that they have never seen anything like this before, and it's kicking their artillery breaking it into pieces, shattering it into pieces, I would be very concerned if I were on the Ukrainian joint staff or one of their generals, because these things are designed to be cheaply made. That's the whole point. And remember, cheap in the military it does not mean these things still cost thousands of dollars to produce, if not tens of thousands. I've seen some estimates at around $50,000 per drone. Again, these are just estimates, but the point is that you have a similar kind of arrogance, I would say, in regards to World War II. You have people that look at the German tanks, say, well, the German tanks are very, skillfully engineered, and it's true. Yeah, they have a Tiger tank is an 88 millimeter cannon. It's absolutely enormous, and the engine would break down, which is a great plus, and the parts are difficult to replace too, and the crew takes a longer time to train. Those things, they end up making you lose the war, right? What's the point of having a nicer tank if you can't fix it when it breaks down, or the crew need a longer time to train? Or it's more costly to produce. You end up losing the war, and they did. The Russians, they would make T-34s. I'm not saying it's a crappy tank, but, you know, people make fun of it compared to a Tiger tank. Well, guess what? The Russians, because they were able to mass produce them in a war of attrition, that can get you a lot. And I don't know how this is going to go now in Ukraine, but having these Iranian drones, hundreds of them, thousands of them, the numbers are undisclosed, but yeah, they're designed to fulfill one job, and they're doing it pretty effectively. And this is why the Ukrainians are very angry. I want to show you this from the Ukrainian government. They're saying that in response to Iran supplying weapons to Russia to use in its war against Ukraine, today we announced the revocation of accreditation of the Iranian ambassador in Kiev and a significant drawdown of diplomatic personnel at the Iranian embassy. So they've all but cut ties, basically, you know. And if I'm in the Ukrainians' shoes, I mean, yeah, I would obviously do the same. You know, you're arming the guy attacking us. Obviously, we're not going to get on very well. I'm surprised they didn't cut ties completely, actually, honestly. But this is, again, it's, you know, it's all but official, basically. Now, the Iranians, this is their response. This is from Al Jazeera. The Iranians said that they will respond appropriately, to Ukraine's revocation of their ambassador's accreditation. And they put out a short statement and said that it was regrettable and based on unconfirmed reports by foreign media. And the spokesperson did not, so this is from the foreign ministry, the spokesperson Kanani did not mention drones or explicitly deny that Tehran has supplied them to Moscow, but said Iran has exercised a, quote, clear policy of active neutrality, unquote, when dealing with the war in Ukraine. I wouldn't say that's accurate 100%. They've given them the drones, man. And I want to show you something else, because this was from July. The Iranians in July, they said that their technical cooperation with Moscow predates the Ukraine war. So they were saying, well, yeah, we're not denying that we're giving them the drones, but if we are giving them the drones, it's because of a previous agreement. It's nothing to do with the Ukraine war. And I would agree to a certain extent. Yes, Iran and Russia have been allies since before the Ukraine war. They cooperate in a multitude of domains. So I'm not surprised, but you can't call that neutral. I wouldn't say that it's absolutely neutral. I mean, obviously Iran is not sending troops there, but you know, they are giving Russia the upper hand when it comes to drone warfare, because the switchblades, they don't cut it. And again, I think this is another, you know, it shows you again how Iran has done something remarkable, because even under sanctions, they've been able to progress so rapidly in vaccine development, nanotechnology, missile and defense technology, cruise missiles. You remember they unveiled a ballistic and a cruise missile. They named them after General Soleimani and Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes, who were assassinated by Trump. You know, why do you think Donald Trump left the nuclear deal? Because the Israelis are scared of this missile and rocket technology that Iran has. It's very potent and it's very good. The Saudis, you remember a few months ago, they had their Formula One racing. They were so embarrassed because not only were they trying to present themselves as these like great hosts of the Grand Prix, but at the same time, drones were blowing up the headquarters or at least the gas fields of Aramco, which is the Saudi oil company, right? And back then, people were saying, oh, these are Houthis firing them, but they're Iranian drones. Okay, well, they work then, right? They're not pieces of crap like you say they are. Obviously, they're very potent. We should wait and see what happens, but from the preliminary reports, and again, this is New York Times and the Ukrainians themselves saying, they're no joke, these Iranian drones.